This is wonderful. This is good news. In the New York Times, there was an op-ed yesterday on Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. It's fantastic. Ms. McGill Johnson, the president and chief executive officer of Planned Parenthood, wrote yesterday in the New York Times, "For the 11 years that I've been involved with Planned Parenthood, founded by Margaret Sanger, her legacy on race has been debated." I don't know what the debate's about. I mean, she's straight up racist. Sanger, a nurse, opened the nation's first birth control clinic in Brownsville, Brooklyn in 1916 and dedicated her life to promoting birth control to improve women's lives. But was she or was she not a racist? Well, that's a question we've tried to avoid, but we no longer can, and we must reckon with it. Now, let's just first say it's really not much of a debate. It's very, very clear. From statements like, "Hey, pastor, let's not tell the black community, if we can just get them on board with family planning, we can weed out all the undesirables." That sounds kind of racist. Up until now, Planned Parenthood has failed to own the impact of our founders' actions. We have defended Sanger as a protector of bodily autonomy and self-determination while excusing her association with white supremacist groups and eugenics as an unfortunate product of her time. Until recently, we have hidden behind the assertion that her beliefs were the norm for people of her class and era, always being sure to name her work alongside that of W.E.B. Du Bois and other black freedom fighters. But the facts are complicated. Well, not really, Planned Parenthood. All right. Sanger spoke to the women's auxiliary of the Ku Klux Klan at a rally in New Jersey to generate support for birth control. Even though she eventually distanced herself from the eugenics movement, notice not the Klan, because of its hard turn to explicit racism, she endorsed the Supreme Court's 1927 decision of Buck versus Bell, which allowed states to sterilize people deemed unfit. Oh, okay, wait a minute. That's kind of like W.E.B. Du Bois, the black man who thought that 90% of the population with nothing but a bad vegetable. The first human trials of birth control pill, a project that Sanger's passion was in her life, were conducted with her backing in Puerto Rico, where as many as 1,500 women were not told that the drug was experimental or that they might experience dangerous side effects. Now, we don't know what was in Sanger's heart. Yes, we do. She wrote for her whole life. We know exactly what was in her heart. And we don't need to, in order to condemn her harmful choices, we don't need to know what was in her heart. What we have is a history of focusing on white womanhood relentlessly. Whether our founder was a racist is not a simple yes or no question. Yes, it is. Our reckoning is understanding her full legacy and its impact. Our reckoning is the work that comes next. Now listen to this. The first step is making Margaret Sanger less prominent in our present and future. So we just want to bury her. Okay? I don't want to bury any white racists. No white racists. What's his name, Stu? The guy who was responsible in the Civil War. He started the Klan, and he was in, what was his name? He was a general, I think, and he would skin white and black people who were on the other side and put their skin up on barns like pelts in the South. What was his name?
Nathan Bedford Forrest?
Yes, Bedford Forrest. Yes, thank you. I don't want to bury that guy. He's white. I'm not going to... I think we should all learn about Nathan Bedford Forrest. Really bad guy. Sanger remains an influential part of our history and will not be erased. But as we tell the history of Planned Parenthood's founding, we must take full responsibility to the harm that Sanger caused for generations. Now, why is Planned Parenthood coming out with this? Well, you have to read the whole op-ed. which I don't usually do, because, well, I just, and I'm like, hey, Planned Parenthood's woken up. What we don't want to be as an organization is a Karen. See, here's where they become all cultural. You know Karen. She escalates small conversations because of her own racial anxiety. She calls the manager. She calls the police. She stands with other white parents to maintain school segregation. And then there are the organizational Karens, the groups who show up, assert themselves, and tell you where to march. Those who pursue freedom and fairness, but also leverage their privilege in ways that are dehumanizing. Oh. So you don't want to be like that. I'm trying to figure out how Planned Parenthood's message of you can kill it, it's not really a baby is, quote, not dehumanizing. But I ain't smart enough to do that. Sometimes that's how Planned Parenthood has acted. By privileging whiteness, we've contributed to America harming black women and other women of color. And when we focus too narrowly on women's health, we've excluded trans and non-binary people. As we face relentless attacks on our ability to keep providing sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion, we claim the mantle of women's rights to be the exclusion of other causes that women of color and trans people cannot afford to ignore. And when we are rightfully called out by leaders in the movement for reproductive justice who have pushed us for years to do better, we cry. In doing so, we're failing in our mission to care for all of the communities that we serve. We're committed to confronting any white supremacy in our own organization and across the movement for reproductive freedom. We pledge to fight the many types of dehumanization we are seeing right now, the dehumanization of black and Latino victims of police violence, such as Adam Toledo, Dante Wright, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and too many others. The dehumanization of transgender people whose health care and rights are being denied in states across the country, and who face attacks not just from the right, but also from trans-exclusionary radical feminists. Oh. Now, they say this is going to be seen as virtual signaling, but we're taking this work seriously. I want you to know, they go on for a couple of paragraphs to virtue signal, but that's not what it's about. That's not what this is. This is not about Margaret Sanger. It's not about admitting to racism. This is actually a declaration of war. This is actually a Planned Parenthood saying, okay, we're done with phase one. Now we're getting serious. About what? So what does this mean? What is happening with Planned Parenthood? Why are they saying these things and doing these things? Well, here's what they're doing. It's really clever what they're doing. She signals, some might see this as a virtual signaling, but we're taking it seriously. With this editorial, what she is doing is she is cutting out their own tongues and handing it to conservatives and others, important and others, handing it, and then somehow or another, because I probably used the wrong metaphor because now she has a tongueless mouth and so she can't really speak, but she's disfigured herself and said, look what we'll do to ourselves. And we're coming after you. This is a declaration of war. They don't care about their hypocrisy anymore. They're not even going to waste time accusing us of paranoia, crafting conspiracy theories about Margaret Sanger. They're going to say, we already dealt with ours. They're admitting that everything we have said for decades is actually true and that they've been gaslighting us. But instead of dwelling on that, they can now take the stand of, we've already talked about this. The editorial is a dog whistle, yeah, I used it, to the transgender activists that have so much Twitter power. Planned Parenthood is saying, don't come after us. We're on your side. Because in the article, that one line there towards the end, the dehumanization of transgender people whose health care and rights are being denied in states across the country and who face attacks not just from the right, but also trans exclusionary radical feminists. TERF is what that's known as. This is massive. What TERFs are people that they're kind of like radical Marxist feminists, but with some common sense, maybe. I don't know how to describe them. They are, USA Today says they are feminists who are transphobic. No, they're actually paying attention to science. They're not phobic. They're feminists who believe in science. And they say, look, we're feminists. We can be transgender, but that doesn't make us women. It doesn't make you women. Okay? They actually consider transgenderism proof of the patriarchy. They're feminists that believe that the patriarchy exists, and it's not just an academic boogeyman. It really does exist. They believe gender is a social construct assigned at birth and then used to oppress women. So according to them, when a transgender woman claims to be a woman, they are actually flexing their muscles, their male muscles, and male privilege over women. Good example of a TERF is J.K. Rowling or Deborah Soh. Gloria Steinem is even a TERF, okay? Well, she used to be, and then she buckled. Deborah Soh and J.K. Rowling are not buckling. Transgender activists are bullies. The left is afraid of them. They hold a lot of power of Twitter, and lately, power on Twitter is power in culture and power in politics. Now, I have no problem with, being inclusive. I think it's good as long as equality, actual equality is what you're searching for, not equity. And I don't like it when the inclusion is actually exclusion, when the solution harms other people. Anyone who disagrees with trans activists, or modern feminists for that matter, becomes a target that trans activists attack relentlessly, using intimidation, death threats, demanding that anyone who challenged them, doctors, counselors, sexologists, biologists, have to be fired and driven from the public. These are the witchcraft hunters, in Salem. That's just our time. We have to have reason. We have to have personal responsibility. We have to remember that we are human. Planned Parenthood in this op-ed has just changed the game and got a deeper level of war.